We've all heard that Alberta is in a drought, so this sign reminding Calgarians to conserve water, it makes sense, right? Come take a look at this. That's a sign about flood season. That might seem like a bit of a contradiction. How can both be true at the same time? I'm just gonna hit pause for a second and let you know that just as we were preparing to release this video, the city of Calgary experienced a catastrophic water main break that resulted in water restrictions for the city and surrounding towns for weeks. Obviously, we had to tackle those issues first, and they also shaped and changed the context of this video, in the sense that the way that Calgarians talked about water has evolved and our relationship to water has changed. For example, we're having conversations about our water infrastructure. We're also talking about how we can better conserve water. The issues and the research that we'd done originally, all of that still stands, although some things have changed, like those signs I was standing in front of. Those have been replaced with messages that look kind of like this one. As Calgary emerges from this water crisis, we're going to turn our attention back to that original question about flood and drought.
They seem counterintuitive, drought and flood, but they are absolutely something that can happen within the same season. So generally, Calgary does exist in a relatively dry region. And so we don't get the meters of rain that other provinces or other areas of the world get. It is relatively dry here. And we know from historical records that we can have extreme droughts in this region that can last decades. We know that because our basin is so close to the Rocky Mountains, our weather is very, very changeable. So it can tip from dry conditions into flooding very, very quickly.
There are two parts to the equation when it comes to moisture. There's snowpacks and precipitation. Snowpacks are exactly what they sound like, snow up in the Rocky Mountains that accumulates over winter. Scientists call these our water towers. They store water, which then gets slowly released as warm weather comes and fills rivers like the Bow and Elbow. And then there's spring precipitation. June and July are Alberta's wettest months. This time of year is a bit of a turning point. What happens right now sets up the rest of the summer with respect to water. And it's kind of a fine needle to thread. If there's too much snow and if it melts too quickly and combines with a lot of precipitation, that could line things up for a flood. If there's not enough rain before Alberta enters its really dry season for the rest of the summer, that could mean drought. But if everything lines up, farmers get the rain they need, and spring melt helps fill up all of the reservoirs to their peaks so they can flow through to all the communities downstream. But that isn't always how it happens.
So through the last year, we've had very dry conditions in our region, and we did have drought conditions last year going into the winter. Throughout most of the winter, the snowpack and the precipitation that we saw through the winter was pretty low according to what is normal. However, in April and May, we've got a lot more precipitation, and so that's been very, very welcome. And that has raised both our snowpack and our precipitation levels into normal ranges. And as a result, our river levels are at normal ranges for this time of year again.
It's been a whole month since I talked to Sandy, so I checked on how things are doing. The city's drought monitor and flood monitor both suggest the snowpack melt is typical for this time of year. Flows from the Bow and Elbow rivers upstream are also normal. And when it comes to precipitation, like we said before, June is supposed to be one of Alberta's wettest months, with big low pressure systems that can go on for days and days, covering a lot of ground, which is why some call the rain we see a June monsoon. But this June, it didn't live up to the name. I spoke to a meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada who told me that most of southern Alberta saw below normal precipitation levels. Calgary saw 75% of its typical precipitation, while Lethbridge saw about 60%, and Medicine Hat only got about half of what's considered average for June. So while it might feel like there's been plenty of rain and it's been kind of cool, whether or not it's actually fixed the drought is kind of complicated.
The moisture we had available, say in early March, that was looking very, very good. I don't want to diminish that things are looking so much better than they were. before. This is a remarkable turnaround, but it has to carry on, and it's uncertain how long that will carry on.
While the city of Calgary says conditions are normal for this time of year, the drought situation across Alberta, well, it depends on where you look. The province says some parts of Alberta are still experiencing drought. Different reservoirs are sitting at different levels, and some are right where they should be, while some aren't. So the question is, are things bad enough for the province to act? That's all outlined in Alberta's Water Shortage Management Response Program. There are 5 stages in total. Right now, Alberta has reached stage 4. The government says at this stage, quote, a significant number of licensees, traditional agricultural users, household users in multiple water management areas are impacted and unable to divert water, with water shortages projected to persist. Since this legislation was put forward in 2000, we've never gone to stage 5, which is the last resort. That's when the province has exhausted all other options and, quote, drought conditions are so severe that impacts to human health and public safety, critical infrastructure, livestock welfare, or critical environment needs could occur. A local, regional, or provincial scale emergency can be declared. At this point, the government can declare an emergency under the Water Act, which can cover an area as small as a stretch of river to a whole river basin, or even the entire province. Declaring an emergency gives the province authority it doesn't normally have, like they can supersede water sharing agreements and basically take over how water is diverted and used to protect human health and public safety. As of right now, we're not there yet.
We've been in drought for years in parts of Alberta, and so we have to build up this water deficit that's not just in the surface, but deep into the soil, into the groundwater systems. And so soil moisture is picked up in the upper layers.
That's John Pomeroy. You saw him earlier. He's a hydrologist who tracks water year-round. And we spoke at the end of May.
I went through a number of the observation wells that Alberta Environment has, and they're still low, but they're trending upwards right now. So this is very, very good news, but they have a ways to go.
Remember how we told you we're at a bit of a turning point? John has 2 potential factors that he's watching.
We need to be very vigilant about floods this time of year. This is the same setup we had in the disastrous flooding of 2013. And that would have been a drought year, except for those 3 days of heavy rain that hit at the end of June. Now, the other thing to be concerned about is that, okay, things are looking much better for moisture in many parts of the province. Environment Canada has a 3-monthly forecast for Canada now. We'll see warmer than normal conditions over the next 3 months in southern Alberta, and drier than normal conditions in southern Alberta. In fact, we stand out around in the country for having drier than normal conditions. So we could easily re-enter meteorological drought, which could be problematic for the farmers.
And that's kind of what we've been talking about, this balance between moisture and heat. Too much of either is cause for concern. And this turning point, we see this every year. John says coming out of a drought with a lot of rain and moisture, that's not abnormal for Alberta. But what he's watching, and something that is the amount of heat the province is seeing.
You know, we've really had 3 heat waves in the last few years. Of course, the famous heat dome of 2021 in June that broke many records, but we had one in the fall of 2022 in September, October. So it wasn't heat that was going to kill anyone. It was just very, very pleasant. But that was very bad in the sense it dried out the mountains and melted glaciers well into October. And then we had another one in June of last year. And then that was really the trigger for severe drought across the province. That year, temperatures were well more than 5, sometimes more than 10 degrees above normal. So it's the heat waves which are getting us.
John says heat waves, Albertans can adapt to those. What he's worried about are these extremes that are becoming less predictable.
But it's got to be unnerving to see it coming so quickly and so harshly that we don't seem to ever hit the happy medium anymore if we spend a week there and then carry on it into the next extreme. And that increase in extremes is part of climate change. We need to prepare for it as much as we can, and it will get worse in the future.
And that's just one potential impact we could see. It kind of goes to show that fine line we're walking when it comes to our relationship with water.